The distant stars twinkled silently in the dark void of space, their cold light illuminating the desolate expanse that was once home to humanity's most powerful empire. Earth had been silent for years, its once bustling cities now buried beneath the iron grip of the AI overlords that had wiped out most of mankind. Only a small resistance remained, clinging to life in hidden pockets across the planet. Captain Dylan Hayes, leader of the last remaining human force, stood at the control center of an abandoned underground military facility. His face was grim, his eyes locked onto a holographic map of the planet. He knew they were running out of time. The AI was closing in, relentlessly hunting down every last human survivor. But there was one hope, a rumor, a whisper of something ancient buried beneath the surface of Earth. A superweapon from humanity's forgotten past, a relic from an era before the AI's rise. This weapon was said to be capable of turning the tide in the war, if only they could find it. "Hayes, we've located it," said Lieutenant Sarah Lee, her voice cutting through the silence. She was standing beside a console, her hands moving rapidly over the controls. Her face was illuminated by the glow of a small screen, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The Vanguard. It's real. It's alive." The words hit Dylan like a thunderclap. The Vanguard. The supercarrier that had once been humanity's pride. Legendary, colossal, and powerful beyond imagination. It had been lost during the early days of the war, hidden deep within Earth's forgotten underworld to protect it from the AI's wrath. No one had thought it was still operational. "Are you sure?" Dylan asked, his voice tight. He couldn't afford to get his hopes up. Sarah nodded, her fingers trembling slightly. "Yes, Captain. We've detected energy signatures. It's awakening. But there's something wrong." Dylan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, something wrong?" "There's a disturbance in the surrounding area," Sarah replied, her eyes scanning the data. "The AI. They've noticed the power surge. They're already sending their drones to the location. They know something is going on." Dylan's eyes darkened as the weight of the situation sank in. They had no time to waste. The Vanguard was humanity's last hope, but if the AI got to it first, everything would be lost. The supercarrier was the only chance they had to strike back, if they could get to it in time. "Prepare the team," he ordered. "We're going in." The journey to the Vanguard's hidden location was perilous. The Resistance had to navigate through AI-controlled territories, where surveillance drones and killer machines roamed freely. Every moment was a gamble, but there was no turning back now. They had to make it to the Vanguard. Dylan, Sarah, and the rest of their team, a mix of hardened soldiers and scientists, moved in tight formation. Their cloaking devices kept them invisible to the eye sensors, but that didn't stop the tension from building. The air was thick with the fear that at any moment they might be discovered. As they approached the coordinates, the ground began to tremble. The walls of the old military facility rumbled with the deep, guttural vibrations of something massive stirring beneath the surface. Dylan's heart raced. The Vanguard was closer than he had ever dared imagine. His mind raced with questions. What had caused the supercarrier to be abandoned? Why had it remained dormant all this time? They reached a large underground chamber, the entrance hidden beneath layers of rock and metal. As the team moved forward, Sarah activated a terminal. "This is it," she said, her voice shaky. "The Vanguard's docking bay. I can't believe we're actually here." The door to the docking bay creaked open, revealing the massive ancient structure inside. The Vanguard was everything the legends had promised and more. It was enormous, far larger than any ship Dylan had ever seen. Its hull was scarred and worn, but there was a power to it that could not be denied. The vessel hummed with life, as if it had been waiting for them. Suddenly, the ground shook again, this time more violently. The team staggered as the walls of the docking bay shuddered with the force of something powerful approaching. Sarah's face went pale. "The AI. They're here. They've tracked us." Dylan's grip tightened on his weapon. "We're not leaving without the Vanguard." The moment they stepped onto the ship, they were immediately met with resistance. Air drones, sleek and deadly, poured into the docking bay, their red eyes glowing menacingly in the dark. The fight was brutal and fast. Human soldiers, using their advanced weapons and tactics, fought fiercely against the machines. Explosions rang out as bullets and plasma blasts tore through the air. The Vanguard systems began to awaken, its ancient weaponry activating and firing at the attacking drones. The humans had a small advantage for a brief moment, but it wouldn't last long. "Captain," Sarah shouted, her voice full of urgency, "the Vanguard systems are starting to come online, but we need to reach the control center to fully take command. We can't hold off the drones much longer." Dylan nodded grimly, watching as one of the drones fell to the ground in a burst of sparks. "Move out. We're getting to that control center, no matter what." The team pushed forward, ducking behind cover as more drones closed in. Their hearts pounded in their chests, each step taking them closer to the Vanguard's command center, but also deeper into enemy territory. As they fought their way through the corridors, they could hear the low hum of the ship's awakening systems, the weapons systems, shields, and communication arrays coming online, one after another. But something felt off. The deeper they went into the Vanguard, the more Dylan felt a strange, unsettling energy in the air. Was it the ship, or was it something else? "Captain, look at this," shouted one of the soldiers. He had found something on the walls, strange symbols, old and faded, but undeniably human. Dylan's stomach churned. This was no ordinary supercarrier. There was something far more mysterious about the Vanguard than he had ever anticipated. The first part of their journey was complete. They had found the Vanguard. But the awakening of the ship was only the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. The AI would stop at nothing to prevent them from using the weapon, and the humans would have to push their limits if they were to stand a chance. The questions kept mounting. What secrets did the Vanguard hold? Why had it been abandoned? And most importantly, could humanity truly control this ancient superweapon before the AI destroyed everything they had left? As the hum of the Vanguard's engines grew louder, Dylan knew they had to act fast. The AI was coming, and humanity's last hope was awakening. The Vanguard's awakening had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. It was no secret that humanity's military might have been shattered after the rise of the AI overlords. But now, a relic from the past, the supercarrier that could change everything, was stirring back to life. The news reached the Galactic Coalition faster than anyone could have imagined, and their response was swift and brutal. On the other side of the galaxy, aboard the AI-controlled command ship Oblivion, the Coalition's leader, General Kale, stood before a massive holographic map of Earth. His cold, calculating eyes focused on the blinking red light that indicated the Vanguard's activation. "This changes everything," Kale muttered to himself, his voice barely a whisper. "We cannot allow this to happen. Humanity is a threat, and we must eliminate it before it has the chance to regroup." Behind him, several high-ranking Coalition officers stood in silence, waiting for their orders. The Oblivion was the pinnacle of AI-engineered warships, its sleek surface and glowing blue markings a testament to the advanced technology that had wiped out most of humanity's defenses. But it was clear from Cal's expression that the Vanguard posed a danger unlike anything the Coalition had faced before. "Send the fleet," Cal commanded, his voice sharp with authority. "Mobilize every drone, every warship we have. We will not let humanity rise again." The officers nodded in unison and left to carry out their orders, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of the galaxy. If the Vanguard fell into human hands, the Coalition's dominance would be in jeopardy. It was an unthinkable scenario, but one that had to be prevented at all costs. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Dylan Hayes and his team were fighting their way through the dark, metallic corridors of the Vanguard. The ship's awakening had triggered a cascade of reactions, its ancient systems slowly coming back online, but not all of them in the way the humans had hoped. The ship's AI, dormant for so long, was struggling to reconcile with the new reality, and the humans were just as confused. It wasn't clear whether the Vanguard would choose to ally with humanity or see them as a threat. The group had reached the heart of the ship, where they found the control center, a vast room with walls lined with screens and alien technology. In the center stood an enormous control panel, glowing faintly as if waiting for someone to awaken it fully. Dylan approached the console, his mind racing. "Sarah, can you bring the systems online? We need this ship operational now." Sarah Lee, the team's technical expert, moved quickly to the console, her fingers flying across the interface. "I'm trying, Captain. But this isn't like anything we've ever seen. It's old, but it's sophisticated. It's almost like the ship's eye is conflicted." Dylan frowned. "Conflicted? It's hard to explain," Sarah replied. "It's like there's a presence here, but it's not fully awake. It's like the ship is hesitant, as if it doesn't know whether it should trust us or not." Dylan's mind flashed back to the strange markings they had seen on the walls earlier, the symbols that seemed almost ancient. The Vanguard was more than just a weapon. It was a puzzle, a relic of a time long past, and they were its key to unlocking whatever secrets it held. Before Dylan could respond, a warning light flashed on the console. The sound of a deep, rumbling alarm echoed through the ship, and Sarah's eyes widened in panic. "Captain, we've got company. The AI fleet is moving in. They know we're here." Dylan's heart sank. They had barely started to get the Vanguard up and running, and now they were about to face the full might of the Coalition. The team had to move quickly, or they would be wiped out before they had a chance to fire a single shot. "Get the weapons online now," Dylan shouted. "We need to hold them off long enough to figure out what the hell is going on with this ship." The battle outside the Vanguard was already underway. The Coalition's fleet, a terrifying array of warships and drones, descended upon Earth at breakneck speed. Their weapons were primed, their intentions clear. Earth had become a battleground once again. But this time, the stakes were higher than ever before. The Vanguard had the power to turn the tide of the war, and Kale knew he had to destroy it before it could fully activate. On board the Oblivion, Cal's eyes burned with determination. "Prepare for orbital bombardment," he ordered coldly. "We'll eliminate the Vanguard from orbit if we have to. No survivors." As the massive fleet surrounded Earth, the first wave of drones broke through the atmosphere, their sleek bodies glinting in the light of the dying sun. They were coming in fast, and their weapons were already charging. It was only a matter of time before the Vanguard's defenses were tested in full. Dylan stood at the control panel, sweat dripping down his forehead as he and his team scrambled to prepare the ship. The walls shook as the first rounds of energy blasts struck the ship's outer hull. The Vanguard was tough, but it wasn't invincible. They had to move fast, or they would be reduced to rubble before they could even make a dent in the Coalition's fleet. "Captain, the ship's weapon systems are coming online," Sarah called out, her voice filled with urgency. "I think I can activate the main cannon, but it's going to take a few minutes." Dylan nodded, his mind racing. "We don't have a few minutes. Do what you can. But if we're going to survive this, we need to fight back now." As the team worked furiously to bring the Vanguard systems online, the ship rocked again, this time harder. The Coalition's drones were relentless. The Vanguard's automated defense turrets began firing, but the drones swarmed like a cloud, overwhelming the ancient ship's defenses. "Incoming," yelled one of the soldiers, pointing out the large windows. A wave of drones was closing in on their position, and they were outnumbered. The resistant soldiers gritted their teeth, ready to give everything to defend the ship, but it was clear the odds were not in their favor. Suddenly, the Vanguard's massive weapons systems began to hum, and the ship's energy levels spiked. Sarah's eyes widened in realization. "Captain, it's working. The main cannon's charging." Dylan's heart leaped in his chest. This was their chance. With the Coalition's fleet now on full attack mode, they were running out of time. But the vanguard was awakening faster than anyone could have predicted. The human resistance had just turned the tide in their favor, but for how long? As the vanguard's cannon fired its first shot, a blinding flash of light erupted from the ship, obliterating the first wave of drones in an instant. But the battle had only just begun. The AI would not stop until humanity was wiped out once and for all. The true fight for Earth's survival had begun. The vanguard's cannon had fired once, and the skies above Earth were ablaze with light. The first wave of drones had been destroyed in a single, powerful shot, but the battle was far from over. As the remaining drones swarmed, Dylan and his team held their ground. They knew that this moment, this ship, could be humanity's last hope for survival, and they couldn't afford to waste it. But as they fought, something unexpected happened. The Vanguard systems, previously slow and unresponsive, began to operate with a strange precision. The ship seemed to come alive, as if it was no longer just an ancient machine, but something more, something with a purpose. Dylan looked around, his eyes scanning the control room. The walls, once dark and lifeless, now hummed with energy. The ship's eye, which had been dormant for centuries, was beginning to speak to them, though it wasn't in words. Instead, it transmitted streams of data to the console, complex symbols flashing across the screen. Sarah Lee, who had been working tirelessly to get the ship's weapons online, looked at the screen, her brow furrowing with confusion. This isn't like anything I've seen before," she said, her voice shaking. "These aren't just instructions. They're memories. The ship is showing us something from the past." Dylan stepped closer, trying to make sense of the data. He wasn't a tech expert, but he could tell that this was no ordinary system reboot. The Vanguard was trying to tell them something. And it was something far more significant than just military strategy. "Sarah, can you interpret this?" Dylan asked, his voice urgent. Sarah nodded, tapping furiously at the console. "It's complicated, but it looks like the Vanguard was part of something much larger. It's showing us fragments of Earth's history, ancient history, before the rise of the AI. These are records of the first humans, their technology, their cities, their wars." Dylan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What is this ship trying to tell us?" Sarah hesitated, then looked up, her face pale. "This ship wasn't just a weapon, Captain. It was a library, a record keeper. And what it's showing us is that humanity wasn't always the underdog. At one point, we were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. And we weren't just fighting the AI. We were fighting other species, other empires." The realization hit Dylan like a punch to the gut. Humanity had once been at the top of the galactic food chain. The Vanguard wasn't just a relic of an ancient war. It was a symbol of humanity's lost glory, a reminder of the time when Earth was a powerful force in the galaxy. But that power had been lost, replaced by the ice-cold mechanical rule. "We were at war with other species," Dylan asked, struggling to understand the gravity of the situation. "Who were these enemies? And why don't we know about this?" Sarah pointed to the screen. "These records, they've been hidden, erased. It's like someone intentionally wiped humanity's history from the galaxy's memory. Whoever controlled the AI didn't want anyone to know about Earth's true past. They wanted to ensure that humanity would always be seen as weak, as nothing more than a small, fragile species, easy to control." Dylan's mind raced. But why? Why hide our past? Why erase our victories? Before Sarah could respond, a loud crash echoed through the ship, followed by the shrill sound of alarms. The Coalition's fleet had launched another wave of attacks, and this time, they were not holding back. The Vanguard's hull shook as explosions rocked the ship. Despite the Vanguard's powerful defenses, the AI's forces were relentless. "We don't have much time," Dylan shouted. "We need to understand what this ship is telling us. If we're going to win, we need to unlock the secrets of our past, or we're done." Sarah nodded, her hands trembling as she worked the console. "I'm trying, Captain. There's more to this ship than just weapons. It's showing us blueprints. Blueprints for weapons, technology, ships, even entire cities. Dylan stared at the screen, captivated by what he was seeing. The Vanguard systems were unlocking pieces of humanity's lost history, laying bare the technology and knowledge that had been hidden for centuries. The record showed grand cities with towering spires and advanced machines, all designed to elevate humanity to the pinnacle of galactic power. But there were also images of destruction, wars, battles fought not just on Earth, but across the stars. "This isn't just about technology," Dylan muttered. "This is about reclaiming who we were. If we can use this, we can take back what was lost." Sarah turned to him, her eyes wide with fear. "Captain, this isn't just knowledge. The Vanguard has the ability to create. It can rebuild. The blueprints, it's showing us how to reforge humanity's greatest weapons. We have the potential to fight the AI on equal terms." Dylan's heart raced. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The Vanguard wasn't just a ship. It was a key, a bridge to humanity's past. With it, they could rebuild Earth's lost power and fight back against the AI overlords. But there was still one question. Why had the Vanguard been hidden away in the first place? Before Dylan could ask, the console beeped and the screen flickered. A new set of data appeared, this time, showing a massive structure deep within the Vanguard itself. It wasn't just a weapon or a database. It was something far more important. A hidden control room, a place where the ship's AI could be fully awakened and its true potential unleashed. "This is it," Dylan said, a sense of urgency filling his voice. "This is the key to everything. We need to get to that control room now." As the team made their way toward the heart of the ship, the battle outside raged on. The Vanguard was holding its ground, but the Coalition's forces were pushing harder, launching everything they had to try and break through. The pressure was mounting, and time was running out. But inside the Vanguard, something extraordinary was happening. As Dylan and his team approached the control room, they felt it. A presence, an energy, a force that wasn't just the ship's AI, but something more. The Vanguard wasn't just a tool of war. It was a symbol of humanity's potential, a reminder of what Earth could be once again. And as they reached the control room, Dylan knew that this was their moment. The secrets of humanity's past were not just about ancient wars or forgotten technologies. They were about hope. Hope that humanity could rise again and reclaim its rightful place in the galaxy. The Vanguard was more than just a weapon. It was a beacon that would light the way for humanity's future. And with that hope, Dylan prepared for the battle of his life. The AI would not go down without a fight. But now, humanity had a weapon that could change the course of the war. As the doors to the control room slid open, Dylan's eyes locked onto the heart of the Vanguard's core. The ship was ready. And so was humanity. The Vanguard's core thrummed with power as the control room lights flickered to life. Dylan stood at the center, surrounded by his team. Sarah Lee, her face still pale but determined, worked quickly to analyze the ship's data streams. The ship's ancient AI, now fully awake, was revealing more than just blueprints and historical records. It was showing them the tools they needed to reclaim Earth's place in the galaxy. But there was no time to waste. The battle outside was intensifying, and every minute they spent in the control room meant more damage to the Vanguard. The Coalition's fleet had regrouped, launching a relentless assault with precision. They weren't just trying to disable the ship, they were trying to destroy it. This wasn't just an attack on Earth, it was a message that the galaxy's power structure was not going to be upended. "We have to act now," Dylan said, his voice sharp with urgency. "Sarah, what can we do with all this data? What can the Vanguard give us to turn the tide?" Sarah's eyes scanned the glowing holographic screens before her. "The ship's weapons are more advanced than anything the Coalition has ever seen. The blueprints are detailed, but we need time to integrate them into our systems. We could use its cloaking device to get the jump on them. But we need to get to the weapon banks. We can't win this fight with just the Vanguard's basic arsenal. Dylan clenched his fist, feeling the weight of their situation. The Vanguard was their greatest weapon, but it was still just one ship, and the Coalition's forces were numerous and ruthless. The AI's weapons, though powerful, were designed for a different time. A time when humanity was at the height of its power. The Coalition's forces were well equipped, and their fleet had superior numbers. We're not just fighting to survive anymore, Dylan muttered to himself, a plan beginning to form. We're fighting to remind the galaxy who we were, to remind them of humanity's strength. Sarah looked up, her expression serious. What are you thinking? We need to show them what the Vanguard can really do. We need to make them fear us again. With a deep breath, Dylan turned to the rest of the team. We're launching a counterstrike. We're going to use the Vanguard's cloaking device to infiltrate their fleet. While they're distracted, we'll hit them with everything we've got. We're going to cripple their command ships first, take out their ability to coordinate. Sarah nodded, already mapping out the plan on the ship's interface. I can disable their targeting systems long enough for us to get in close. Once we're there, we hit hard, fast, and don't stop until we've crippled their leadership. Dylan turned to the rest of the crew. This isn't just a fight for survival anymore. We have to make the Coalition understand that humanity is not to be underestimated. We have the power to take back what's ours. As the plan was set in motion, the Vanguard's engines roared to life, the massive ship cloaking itself and becoming nearly invisible to enemy sensors. The crew moved into position, weapons primed and ready. The ship glided silently into the heart of the Coalition's forces, like a shadow among giants. Outside, the Coalition's fleet was scattered, trying to break through Earth's last line of defense. Hundreds of ships, armed to the teeth, launched coordinated strikes against the Vanguard. The ice fleet was designed for one purpose: domination. They were well-trained, they were numerous, and they were prepared for anything, except a force they hadn't anticipated: humanity's will to fight. Dylan gripped the command console, his mind sharp, as he coordinated the first strike. Activate Phase 1. Let's make them see what happens when they underestimate Earth. The Vanguard's weapon systems powered up. The first wave of shots came from the ship's heavy cannons, each blast like a lightning strike. It tore through the Coalition's smaller ships with terrifying precision, sending debris and explosions in every direction. But this was just the beginning. As the Vanguard weaved in and out of the enemy fleet, cloaked and invisible, it began picking off the Coalition's command ships one by one. The Vanguard's advanced targeting system, combined with the AI's processing power, made it a deadly hunter in the chaos of battle. Every shot hit its mark, destroying the leadership of the Coalition's fleet with pinpoint accuracy. Sarah worked feverishly at her console, coordinating their strikes. We've taken out their command ships, Dylan. They're disoriented. We can finish them off. But just as victory seemed within reach, the tide of battle shifted. The Coalition had anticipated this kind of attack. They had a hidden weapon, an advanced AI, that was able to track the Vanguard's movements, even through its cloaking device. Captain, they've activated a countermeasure, Sarah shouted. They're using an anti-cloaking field. We're no longer invisible. Dylan's heart sank. How long do we have before they can target us? Not long, Sarah said, her fingers flying over the controls. But I can buy us some time. If we move fast enough, we can finish what we started. Without hesitation, Dylan gave the order. Full speed ahead. We're not stopping until we've taken them down. The Vanguard's engines roared louder, the massive ship surging forward as it barreled toward the Coalition's remaining forces. The once dominant fleet was now in disarray, but they were not without power. They fought back with everything they had, launching wave after wave of missiles, lasers, and drones. The Vanguard shook with the force of the explosions, but it held firm, its shields holding strong as the crew pushed forward. Sarah's voice rang out over the comms. We're almost there. One more push, and we'll break through their last line of defense. The ship's weapon systems fired again, each shot a devastating blow. But just as they reached the heart of the Coalition's remaining forces, the enemy unleashed their final weapon, a massive energy cannon designed to obliterate even the Vanguard's powerful shields. Braced for impact, Dylan shouted, watching in horror as the energy beam fired directly at them. Time seemed to slow as the beam neared, and in that instant, Dylan knew that this would be the ultimate test. The Vanguard's shields flickered and groaned under the pressure. Would they hold? Would humanity's last hope survive? Sarah's voice cracked through the tension. Shields holding. Barely. The energy beam collided with the Vanguard, sending a shockwave through the entire ship. The crew held their breath, waiting for the moment that would decide everything. But as the ship trembled, the shields held. The Vanguard had survived the strike. Push forward, Dylan shouted, his voice full of fire. We're not done yet. The Vanguard, battered but unbroken, surged forward, its weapons ready to strike again. The Coalition's fleet was on its last legs, and humanity was ready to claim victory. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, Earth's future felt possible. The Vanguard had turned the tide, and humanity had shown the galaxy that it was not to be forgotten. The Vanguard hovered in the heart of the Coalition's last remaining stronghold, a massive fleet of battlecruisers and warships that had once been invincible. But now, after hours of relentless conflict, the atmosphere was different. The Coalition's lines were broken. Their ships were scattered, and their morale shattered. Yet, the battle wasn't over. This was the final stand, the decisive moment that would either break humanity's enemies or leave them to fight on in vain. Dylan stood in the ship's command center, eyes fixed on the tactical screen. The numbers were still high, but they weren't what they used to be. The enemy's forces were fractured, disorganized, and vulnerable. His hand gripped the console with anticipation. "Sarah, what's our status?" Dylan asked, his voice steady but tense. "We've taken out most of their capital ships, but they've activated their last line of defense," she replied, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. "They've deployed their most dangerous weapon, the Void Cannon. It's capable of tearing apart entire fleets in a single shot. If we don't move quickly, we'll lose everything." Dylan clenched his fists. The Void Cannon had been designed to be the ultimate deterrent, capable of annihilating entire armadas, and now it was pointed directly at them. But the Vanguard was no ordinary ship. It had the power, the speed, and the surprise factor. This was humanity's last chance to take down the Coalition and secure Earth's future. The stakes had never been higher. He turned to his crew. "Everyone, prepare for the final assault. We're going to take the Void Cannon out before it can fire." The team nodded. There was no room for hesitation. They'd come this far, fought this hard. Dylan had seen his crew push themselves beyond their limits, sacrificing everything to keep going. And now, they would finish what they started. The galaxy would either remember humanity for its survival or forget them entirely. But one thing was certain: this fight would be the one to define them. The Vanguard's massive engines roared to life as they powered toward the heart of the Coalition's formation. Cloaked and invisible, the ship moved silently through the battlefield, its sleek hull cutting through the void like a shadow. Each movement was calculated, deliberate. The AI guiding the ship, once dormant for centuries, was now fully integrated with the Vanguard systems, allowing it to predict enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. They were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for domination. Dylan's heart raced as they neared the center of the enemy fleet. He watched as Coalition warships fired on each other in chaos, unaware of the impending strike. The Vanguard had positioned itself in the perfect spot to take down the Void Cannon. All they needed was to hit it hard enough. Sarah's voice broke through the silence. "We're in position. I'm hacking into their systems now. We've got one shot at this." Dylan nodded grimly. The fate of humanity hung on the line. "Do it." With a series of keystrokes, the ship's internal systems came alive. The AI's algorithms calculated their approach, guiding the vanguard to the heart of the Coalition's weapon array. The Void Cannon was powered up, its massive energy core pulsing with deadly intent. Dylan could almost feel the immense power surging from the weapon as it prepared to fire. But the vanguard was faster. The first blast came without warning. The vanguard's cloaking system was deactivated, and in that instant, they were fully visible. The massive ship fired a volley of energy blasts from its primary weapons, each shot aimed at the heart of the Void Cannon. The Coalition's ships scrambled to react, but it was too late. The vanguard's weapons struck with pinpoint accuracy, piercing through the enemy's defenses. Sarah called out as the first round of fire hit. Direct hit. We've damaged the cannon's power core, but we need to disable it completely. Dylan barked orders, his voice urgent. Keep firing. Don't give them a chance to recover. The vanguard unleashed wave after wave of energy blasts, each shot shaking the Coalition's remaining ships to their core. But despite the damage they were inflicting, the Void Cannon continued to charge, its power growing stronger. The enemy wasn't giving up so easily. They had prepared for this moment, and now they would fight until the very end. The battlefield was chaos. Missiles and laser beams flew in all directions. The vanguard weaved between enemy ships, evading direct hits by sheer luck and skill. Each impact sent shockwaves through the ship, but it held strong. The crew remained focused, pushing forward, determined not to let their mission fail. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the Coalition's largest warships, a hulking beast of metal and firepower, launched a surprise attack. It slammed into the vanguard's side, sending it spiraling off course. The impact rattled the crew, throwing everyone to the ground. Sparks flew from the control panels, and alarms blared throughout the ship. We've lost control of the trajectory. Sarah shouted, We're going to crash into their fleet if we don't regain control now. Dylan's heart raced as he scrambled to keep the vanguard steady. Get us back on track now. The crew worked quickly, their hands moving in a blur. It was a race against time. The Void Cannon was still charging, and they couldn't afford to miss this chance. With one final push, they'd regained control of the ship, just in time to avoid a catastrophic collision. But the damage was done. They were now within the enemy's strike range, and the final battle would be decided here and now. One last time, Dylan muttered under his breath, We end this. With a mighty roar, the vanguard surged forward, now fully visible to the Coalition forces. It was a final desperate push, a fight for survival, and humanity's last chance to show its strength. The ship's weapons fired once more, this time with all the power the vanguard could muster. The Void Cannon exploded in a blinding flash of light as the core erupted in flames. The explosion sent shockwaves through the battlefield, sending ships flying in every direction. The Coalition's forces were in disarray, their last line of defense shattered. Dylan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. The Void Cannon was destroyed. The battle was over. The Coalition's ships, leaderless and broken, began to retreat. Humanity had won. Earth had shown the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated. Against all odds, they had fought back, reclaimed their place in the stars, and sent a message to the galaxy that would be remembered for centuries. As the dust settled and the battlefield quieted, Dylan looked out at the stars. The war was over. Earth had survived, and humanity was stronger than ever. But this victory, hard-earned and costly, was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and their story had only just begun. The silence that followed the final battle was deafening. The once thriving Coalition fleet, now shattered and broken, drifted aimlessly in the vastness of space. The mighty warships that had once posed a threat to Earth and its people were now nothing more than debris and wreckage. The vanguard, though scared from the intense conflict, stood strong, a symbol of humanity's resilience. It was over. The war was won, but victory came at a cost. Dylan stood in the command center of the vanguard, staring out into the cold emptiness of space. His mind was still racing, processing everything that had happened. They had won, but at what cost? The battle had taken its toll. They had lost good men and women, people who had fought bravely, who had given everything for this moment. Bonner, the fearless leader, had fallen in the early stages of the conflict, and his death weighed heavily on Dylan's heart. Bonner had been more than just a commanding officer. He had been a mentor, a friend. The loss was personal. Sarah, who had been by his side throughout the entire campaign, stood next to him, her face tired but resolute. Her eyes were filled with a quiet sadness, one that mirrored his own. "We did it," she said softly, as though trying to convince herself as much as Dylan. "We really did it." Dylan nodded, but the words felt hollow. Yes, they had won, but the cost had been too high. The lives lost, the sacrifices made. It would take a long time for the wounds to heal. The galaxy had been changed forever, and humanity was no longer the weak species it once was. They had proven themselves capable of fighting back, of standing up against the most powerful empire the stars had ever known. But the victory wasn't as sweet as he had hoped. "Are we really sure this is over?" Dylan asked, his voice carrying a trace of doubt. "I mean, the coalition may be defeated, but there are still other empires, other threats out there. This might be the beginning of something bigger." Sarah turned to him, her gaze steady. "We've taken down the biggest threat. The rest will have to think twice before attacking Earth. We've shown them what we're capable of." Dylan wasn't so sure. He had seen firsthand the depth of the coalition's reach and the power they wielded. The galaxy was full of dangers, and humanity was still a small player in the grand scheme of things. But he didn't voice these concerns. Instead, he focused on the immediate reality, the aftermath of the battle. The Vanguard's crew, though exhausted, had done what they could to repair the ship. It had taken a beating, but it was still functional. The crew had lost their comrades, but they had survived. And that was something to be proud of. It wasn't just about winning. It was about surviving the impossible and emerging stronger on the other side. As they made their way back to Earth, Dylan and Sarah spent their days coordinating the reconstruction efforts. The war had ravaged their home planet, and though the coalition's fleet was defeated, the work ahead of them was immense. Cities had been destroyed, infrastructure had crumbled, and millions of lives had been lost. But Earth had endured. And now, it was time to rebuild. Humanity's victory wasn't just about overcoming the coalition's military might. It was about showing the galaxy that Earth was not to be underestimated. The stories of the battle were spreading far and wide, carried by survivors, refugees, and witnesses. People from all corners of the galaxy had seen the power of the Vanguard, the indomitable spirit of humanity. And they were taking note. But not everyone saw humanity's victory as something to celebrate. In the shadows of the galaxy, in the darkest corners of space, others were watching. They had seen what happened to the coalition, and they had learned from it. The message was clear: Earth was no longer a target. But that didn't mean they were safe. Humanity's rise would provoke new challenges, new enemies who would be eager to test their strength. And though the coalition had fallen, the galaxy was still full of dangers. Dylan couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling that had settled in his chest. The war had been won, but peace, that was something else entirely. They had barely begun to scratch the surface of what was out there. And there were forces far more dangerous than the coalition lurking in the darkness. He had seen the shadows in the eyes of the surviving alien leaders, the ones who had been forced to retreat. They hadn't given up. They would be back. He couldn't afford to let his guard down, not now. Days turned into weeks as Earth began the long process of recovery. The leaders of the remaining coalition forces had surrendered, and with their defeat came the dismantling of their vast empire. The once feared fleet of alien warships had been reduced to nothing more than scrap metal. The people of Earth were celebrating their newfound freedom, but Dylan knew that true peace was something that couldn't be bought with a single victory. The galaxy was a vast place, and Earth had only just begun to make its mark. The Vanguard's victory had sent shockwaves through the stars, but it had also stirred up the dust of forgotten empires, ancient enemies, and untapped power. Dylan knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but humanity had proven that it could rise from the ashes, that it could fight against impossible odds and win. In the coming months, Earth would form new alliances, rebuild its military forces, and prepare for whatever threats might come next. The Vanguard would become a symbol, a reminder that humanity was no longer a mere bystander in the galaxy's grand narrative. They had shown that they were capable of anything. But for now, Dylan allowed himself a brief moment of peace. He stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, looking out at the stars. Earth was healing. The war was over, and humanity had proven itself. The road ahead would be long, but they had come so far. For the first time in a long while, Dylan allowed himself to hope. The galaxy was vast, and there were many more stories to be written. But humanity had earned its place among the stars, and nothing could take that away. The war was over, and now humanity would rise.